Now, as I said, Julie likes to color outside the lines. And we got that WannaCry worm situation, and she couldn't get the head of the FBI or the CIA because we can't figure out who those are. They keep changing every day. So instead, she got Dr. Kevin Curran, who is professor of cybersecurity, group leader for ambient intelligence and virtual worlds research group at Ulster University, technical expert for cybersecurity at the IEEE. I won't even tell you. Well, it's the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and obviously a big expert on cybersecurity. But Julie's angle also has to do with all that we're hearing about of using computer devices, technology in the care of medical patients. Dr. Kevin Curran, Fred Feit, interventional cardiologist here in New York. How are you today?
Good. Yeah, glad to be on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And what time is it over there in Ulster?
It's 11:30 in the morning.
Okay, good. And tell me, before we get into the medical stuff, what's going on with cybersecurity? We hear these things that the whole power grid could be shut down, planes could fall out of the sky. We get an email. Julie sends me an email with an attachment every day. Once a week, should I be afraid to open it? How do I know when not to open it? Just start me out by telling me where this WannaCry worm came from.
Yeah, well, the WannaCry worm came from literally the NSA.
Wow.
Where a hacking group released a lot of tools which the NSA had obviously developed and kept quiet for a number of years. And then these were released onto the web in April. And one of the vulnerabilities was very serious on Microsoft Windows operating systems, especially the older ones like Windows XP. So therefore, you could, once a machine was infected, it would spread to all the other machines on the network, because that's different from the traditional ransomware where each machine has to be individually infected. Here, with this vulnerability, only one machine on a computer network has to be infected, and then when it is, it infects that machine, and then it starts to scan the entire network and to go to each machine that's vulnerable and install a backdoor so that it can install the software there and then encrypt those files as well.
Wow! So I don't have to download the worm. If my next door neighbor downloads this, it can come to my computer anyway?
Exactly. If your colleague downloads it and you're running, again, an older version of Windows which has not been updated since April, because, of course, the number one way to protect yourself in life is to have your operating system or your mobile phone operating system updated regularly, because just like there's bad guys out there who are developing these flaws and spend their life trying to look for ransoms and cause destruction, the likes of Apple and Microsoft and Google also have teams of good guys who fix these things, and then they roll them out in updates at least every few weeks. And therefore, if you can update your machine and click on that update, then you're less likely to be compromised, because, again, that the hackers will move on to the lower-hanging fruit, as we say, the older operating systems which have not been updated. And again, you cannot separate this new vulnerability or this new wave of ransomware from what enables it, which is a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a virtual currency. It's pseudo-anonymous, where all the identifiers are just random numbers, so it's literally impossible to identify who owns what unless you have a lot of law enforcement resources thrown at it, like in this case. But of course, the police forces of the world are overflowing now, or snowed under with the crime cases, because everything now has got a digital trail. So now when a crime is committed, you no longer see the police force carting out boxes of paper. They just grab the phones, the laptops, the tablets, because all the incriminating evidence will be on a digital trail somewhere on a device. And the police forces are really under pressure trying to cope with that. So therefore, when it comes to something like a crime committed using Bitcoin, literally, it's impossible for them to have the time to go and try to analyze where it went to. So again, the criminals at the moment have got this in their favor, that they have this virtual currency where they can now not only put malware on your machine, which ransoms all your files, encrypts them, they can also come along to larger organizations and say, we will put your site off the air, we will bring down your website unless you pay us a ransom. And without you knowing it, the public don't know it, but in the background, an awful lot of companies are paying ransomware to these criminals to keep their sites up and active so that they don't lose customers.
So interesting. 1-877-NYU-DOCS, and we're going to get to the medical technology. And if you have any questions about that, we'll just intercept the current thread. So if you have any questions about good uses of technology, managing my diabetes, knowing if I'm about to get a heart attack, managing my high blood pressure. Nobody knows like when we should be measuring blood pressure, how we should be doing it, and it is actually today. Is today Blood Pressure and World Hypertension Day, Julie? Wow! So today is Blood Pressure and World Hypertension Day, a very common condition, the silent killer. So any question about technology, whether it's something as simple as your Fitbit or as complicated as what the future is going to hold, we have obviously a real expert in technology here, Dr. Kevin Curran, 1-877-NYU-DOCS. Let's just stay on the theme that we were on. And Dr. Curran, why did you get interested in this to begin with? Are you a computer geek?
Yes, from a young age. I remember where I was when I first seen a computer at the age of 16, and before that I was a real wild child in school. I was the number one troublemaker, and I just had no attention and no interest, and I still don't, in anything other than computers. I find it really hard to sit quiet and listen to people or listen to talks unless they're on my technology area. And within computers then, I obviously went to college and did a PhD, but I always found networks interesting and security and just that aspect of being able to send a packet from one machine over a network to another and then being able to compromise it. And of course, to be able to, of course I teach my students system security and how to protect themselves online and protect others, but to do that we also have to learn how to hack, and we do that in an ethical environment, of course.
What are the things? I understand what this WannaCry worm does, and I understand the ransomware. But what other evil can be done through these computers? Can it result in planes falling out of the sky? Can it result in the entire power grid being shut down? Can somebody empty out my bank accounts? Give us some of the things that you're most concerned about.
Yes, even the plane. A researcher called Chris Roberts, about a year and a half ago, was taken off a flight in the United States. Because he'd done a crazy thing actually. Underneath your seats on a flight, there's which people are not aware of on a lot of flights, and especially the older ones, would be the flight entertainment box, which controls exactly what it says. The screen that you want to watch your movies on and your TV programs, and especially on long-haul flights. And underneath there's a cable which you can connect to, and it's obviously used for maintenance and everything else. And it's like the network cable you would see in offices. It's what we call an RJ45 jack. But it's a little different wired. But because that's what he does. He reads manuals on planes and he researches that for years in his written papers. But he went on a plane with a cable and connected underneath and bragged about being able that he had tilted the plane. Now, whether he's bragging too much, but the guy is a genuine researcher with credentials. But that was a crazy thing to do. That no ethical hacker and no researcher in security would ever do something which puts the public at risk. So therefore, there's a case of a plane being apparently taken over by someone on board. But of course, aviation is one of the safer things. Again, the systems they have are quite safe. The electronics are shielded. People always wondered about why they have to turn off their phones. That there is. Because it's never properly explained to people, but the number one reason why people were told to turn off phones and take off landing is because it can at times interfere with the pilot's communications with the tower But others will say then that the greater risk is the phone flying around in areas of turbulence or whatever and hitting someone in the face rather than actually bringing the plane down. So your standard smartphone will not bring a plane down if you leave it on and take off. But still.
I understand.
But again, you're right. Everything that's connected can be hacked. If it's connected over a network, then we are vulnerable. We've seen attacks in the ATM systems. You would expect that nuclear facilities and others would not be connected to the internet, but increasingly we're seeing, just because system admins become lazy over time, and rather than drive to the plant or the factory, they put in these kind of remote access systems. And of course, if they can connect, well, then a bad guy hacking with some tools can also find the back door and get into the system and control it. So anything which is internet connected, anything which is network connected really is vulnerable. And again, we've seen one of the, and even if it's not internet connected, of course, you can get your files in there. You know, one of the greatest kind of sabotage acts we've seen in cyberspace has been done by the U.S. and Israeli military, where they wrecked the Iranian subterfuges, which were used for enriching uranium about 2 years ago. And they did that by leaving U.S. apparently it was never denied, leaving USB sticks, you know, which people use for transferring files, and little USB card sticks in the around the facility that were picked up by employees, and of course they're curious and they plug it into the machine to see what does this do, and before you know it, they're on the internal network. And from there, then the worm itself, again, this is one of the first examples of a worm that we're seeing last week, the WannaCry worm, where it was actually updatable. It had modules. It was able to dial out, but it actually went and installed itself, and it wrecked the subterfuges, which spin the uranium at certain speeds. Again,
so interesting.
Again, anything that can be connected is vulnerable.
So interesting. So
people are buying Internet of Things devices now, which their doorbell can be connected to the Internet, their toasters can be connected, their Wi-Fi, the kettle can be connected. But of course, these things come with reduced functionality, with reduced memory, and they don't really run the latest encryption or the latest security updates, of course, and they can be the foothold that hackers get into our systems. And it's been proven in the last year that a lot of these Internet of Things devices, cheap, off-the-shelf things, which really have little to no security.
I understand. Now we're going to have our whole Sirius 110, SiriusXM 110 Doctor Radio audience paranoid about turning on their cable TV. But let's 1-877-NYDocs, 1-877-698-3627. Now that we're all terrified, docs at SiriusXM.com. Kevin Kern, help us out with positive uses of all of this friggin' brilliant technology that you've accumulated, computer knowledge. Do you see some kind of broad path, or is it just going to be one individual thing after another? Is it just the simple things like Fitbits? Are we going to have can you see internal monitors in the body, like putting a chip in so that we could, for a diabetic, know his glucose second to second and hook it up to his to an insulin pump, such that he almost it would be like he had a pancreatic transplant, predict heart attacks? Where do you see computer technology as a positive force for medical care, medical diagnosis, etc.?
Yeah, it's moving to, you're right. We will have implants, technology always gets better. You know, it never gets worse. It becomes cheaper, it becomes smaller, and the functionality increases. So, of course, the smartphone has become the hub of our life. It's replaced single-function devices like torches. No one buys torches anymore. No one buys radios. They use their phone. It's become the hub for everything, you know. So the smartphone is the hub, but the market has become saturated because everyone who needs a phone has a phone. So the smartphone manufacturers and the giants of our time, the Samsungs and the LGs, they all want to see what else can they sell. So a wearable is a next obvious step for them. So these are devices that would be more single function, but they're smaller, and we would have them on our bodies again. That, of course, as you say, the Fitbits, the activity monitors are kind of the most popular ones again, which, again, by early adopters. because they can tell us, how far we ran, what our heartbeat was, and pulse rate, and everything else. And of course, but we also have, there's also non-invasive ones as well. I mean, just like you're saying, there's a non-invasive blood chemistry smart contact lens, which can detect glucose levels via your tears, So again, that's a very clever solution. Again, now it's still quite expensive, but you can see we're now just by default that your future contact lenses will have this sensor inbuilt into it, which will also track, and early detection of diabetes is crucial. So again, that is commercially available. So again, there's no reason we won't see that become just more ubiquitous again. And there's other wonderful ones. Just like you're saying, I was looking there lately at this Netamol bracelet, which you wear, and it measures the sun's exposure. And then the app will tell you how much cream of various factors you should apply. And then, again, it's just able to tell us the impact of the ultraviolet rays on our skin. And hopefully that will lower the incidence of melanoma globally.
Wow.
So, again, and of course, the great thing about a lot of these technologies and blood pressure monitors and cholesterol monitors, that we can connect them to our physicians and that they can see our, what our rates are and monitor us better. And of course, they can overcome the number one problem that doctors experience, is where the patient comes in and tells them that they're complying with their medication routine, that they're doing their exercise, they're doing everything else. And of course, doctors know that patients, it's not that patients are liars, but patients feel they're upsetting the doctor, letting the doctor down if they tell them. So the patients will generally tell a doctor what they think he wants to hear, where every physician wants to hear the truth so that they can make a better diagnosis and have healthier patients. The other thing is, we're just going to see a lot more of remote patient care, where because people have become more familiar now with Skype and video conferencing and using their phones and using Facebook and for Messenger and using video. So we're going to see a lot more consultations with doctors using video. So you don't have to get into your car, drive X number of miles, and find a parking space just for 5 minutes with your physician, where you can do it at home. And if you need to send a video of your scar, of your rash or whatever else, or take a photograph, that can be done quite easily by most people now. So we're seeing that, and you can also, that allows you then to shop around online, and there's a lot of websites which will give you access to a physician on price rather than being stuck with the local doctor in the local clinic. And doctors, it's like everything else. People don't think about it much, but as you know, the quality of a doctor can vary dramatically between one individual and the other. There's great doctors and there's poor doctors again. So at least with this, and especially when you have a related feedback system.
So Kevin Kern,
like eBay and Amazon, where people rate their doctors.
We only have about 20.
Have a better chance of getting a good doctor.
We only have about 20 seconds left. Even my very first car, my 1973 Cutlass Supreme, had a dashboard with all kinds of warning lights. Will there be a day in the next 20 years where we get a little chip under our skin and we have the equivalent where something will beep if something is terribly out of whack?
Absolutely. We are all going to become cyborgs.
Okay.
Maybe not as dramatic as the movies, but we will all have implants within us.
There you have it. And unfortunately, we're up against a hard break. Very interesting segment with Dr. Kern. We're going to be back with Bruce Raphael, talk everything hematologic, 1-877-NYU-DOCS, SiriusXM 110 Doctor Radio, back after the break.